My main purpose now is sharing knowledge about consciousness, spirituality, and the law of attraction. Meditation is a daily part of my life. On whose behalf am I acting? Somewhere in that flow in the middle that keeps us motivated, following our desires about what we want to do. And especially, I think the best desires are if they're about how we serve, find a way to serve, just be. That's my in between of those two extremes. And I know them. I think everybody does. Position of being the witness of it. I watch it. I watch art. It's about giving, but think twice. I wanted people to actually think twice, consider twice whether you should engage the thought. Muji is a teacher that I really like. And it's like the thought goes, let me in. I'm a good thought. I'm fine. Or whatever. You question. You have to judge. You have to govern the mind. Be in the position above the mind. But he said, just know that whether the thought seems like a friendly thought and it's going to be nice to engage that. So you open the door but he said, just know that there's going to be 12 of its friends tagging along behind either way, good or bad. So choose. When you establish yourself as the witness, when you know more about your true self, you get to pick and choose rather than being driven to either this bank or that bank of stress. And that's been really powerful for me. And another thing I do with meditation, I always mix up the times deliberately. I do things that keep me in the moment. The mind would have us go, oh, I'm just drying myself. This is nothing special. This also brings us into the beauty. Life is so beautiful without the definitions of the mind. I love it. I'm in love with life. I love it.
And what you meant by doing the things that bring you to the present is actually bringing the presence into the things you do other way around, actually.
The more you are presence, the more you are living from that. You'll choose a different parking spot at the grocery store. You'll go to the farthest area and get a few steps in. That's central to the law of attraction. Know what you're thinking. Just be aware. The mind is an excellent servant, but a terrible master, as you know. You only know the mountaintop by the valley. So they go together. So I agree. Avoid extremes. So stay centered and be aware of what you're impressing into the mind. Because you're going to witness what you think about, you do bring about. Yeah, you're combing the mirror. It's too late if you're combing the stuff out here. No, stay centered. Live from within, as within, so without. But a lot of people can't put two and two together that way. They think, are you really trying to say that my thoughts and my habitual way of being are creating my life? And I would go, yep. And he said, what's great about nature is it's not trying to be other than it is. Only man is living by this thing of, I have to look just right. Oh, look at this hair here. I just got to get that back. It reminds you that it's okay to just be as you are. I think but most people are trying to live through the perspective of the false self. And that's why this is my passion to share this, because I know I was always, after divorce, I was chasing something out from me. And until I got centered within, I wasn't feeling the peace that is our birthright. I honestly believe it's our birthright. I honestly believe that until we label something as a problem, it's not. Why that was so good for me? Because I was able to leave the persona of art back in Canada. So I felt free. So now I live from that point of freedom. And I'd like to help other people. I'd like to help alleviate some of the suffering that people are going through, because inevitably life will challenge us. There has to be a little friction for growth, just a little, and then manage it and it'll grow. Aware of your addictions. Or if you think that an extra drink or two at night is an answer, I'd say question that at least for what's right for you. I'm fortunate that wasn't part of my road. I'm fortunate that it led me to books with information. And even if I had to read the books 20 times, and I'm not kidding you, one called the Master Key System, I used to take it to the gym. This would be the gross body. This would be the gross. It's dense. And then the subtle body would be of the mind, watching our thoughts. And when we realize that we can watch both of those, it establishes us in the position of I am awareness. I am that I am. That's what I am, and there's no end to me. For me, a few years ago, I actually noticed tears coming sometimes when I would be meditating. Not all the time, maybe once every few months, but they felt good. It was like something that was yearning to be noticed. We think we need that to stay healthy, then we need it. I believe it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. Be aware of if you're eating for pleasure. It's also knowing the difference between appetite and hunger. I believe the mind notices things that I'll put them on a skew, I'll put them on an angle like this where my mind has to pay attention and where I'm going to be there. You find something in yourself that you love and find something in them that you love. Look for what you're seeking. You will find. The Bible says that. Yeah. And it's like, so if you're seeking good, your mind becomes, it finds the good. I'm retired from what I did for 36 years, but you know what? I'm living my passion now. So I'm fully invested. That's why I do my articles. It's all about giving.
Awesome.
I don't mean that in some, I'm not a saint, but I've found my purpose. And so I fully invest in it, giving.
This is the next episode of Love Your Stress with Arthur here, who's an author and ex-paramedic, right?
Yes, that's right.
And before we start, I will just give you opportunity just to introduce with yourself and tell whatever you think is relevant for audience to know, to understand your background story, where you're coming from.
Okay. So my name is Art Russell. I live in a small town called Lindsay, Ontario. It's about 22,000, something like that. I worked for almost 36 years as a paramedic, as a primary care paramedic. And I was married for 20 years, but been divorced since 2006. My main purpose now is sharing knowledge about consciousness, spirituality, and the law of attraction. I've had a long time interest in the law of attraction. It was something that just seemed to lead me book after book after book and reading and that's not bragging. I was just drawn to it. It was like as if a magnet was taking me to those books, and also books on Zen, our true nature, self-help books too, in a way. When I was trying to, that's why I bring in the thing about the divorce. I found it painful. So often when we suffer, we go a little deeper. Well, that happened for me too. And then I think the benefit in this is if we can help someone else have an easier time through some of the lessons that we offer. I always had a passion to write, and a book came through me in 2019, and I'm glad. And I just kept following the breadcrumb trail, and it's out there. And the main purpose is just to see if it will help people. And I'm still writing, still doing my articles. They're totally free. That's my main stuff right now.
Do you see any connection between law of attraction, stress, and self-development in general?
Totally. Now let's see if I can blend this or help blend it. So for me, let's bring up that little personal story. It didn't seem so little at the time. It seemed big, but I'd always meditated even before divorce, but it became even more important after. So dealing with stress. So meditation is a daily part of my life, and it's not I go into it with get rid of ego, not build it up like, oh, look at me, Art Russell, doing such a wonderful meditation. I do it to get rid of Art Russell. I do it to commune in a way. And I was faithful to doing a 20-minute meditation before every shift. And especially because it wasn't really my passion. I loved helping people. That was always 100%. I love that. What could feel better, right? Look what you're doing. You're helping people. Feels good. Brings a smile to your face, just a natural smile. So as far as stress, meditation helped me get out of myself. It helped me find my true self, which is beyond name and form. And I think to a lot of people that sounds a little crazy. They think, no, I'm Art Russell and I gotta look good, so I gotta put on this act. No, I don't live from there. I live from that true self. So meditation helps me deal with stress in a positive way. And I agree with well, I'm not sure if you've related it, but I like to think of it as on whose behalf am I acting? That's a question that Rupert Spira, who's I love his teachings about non-duality. On whose behalf are you acting? So if I think I'm this body temple or unit, as some people call it, I might be all stressed and worried about how I look to others. But when you go to unity consciousness, when you go to oneness, I see the greatness in you. I hopefully am living from that awareness, that point of awareness in me. Then there's no edges. It removes some of the stress.
So when you talk about removal stress, and
Not all of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point I want to get to at some point.
Sure.
And the main question actually is, how would you define the stress? Because in my experience, ask 10 people and you will have 10 different definitions. We all
I,
know how it feels. However, when it gets to the words, everyone has
yeah.
ways of expressing it. So how would you define stress?
Stress, I would agree. I did a little reading about what you've shared, some of your articles on that, to learn more about you. And I think like you said, the extremes. So I believe you said something like this: parasympathetic, we go down into boredom,
Mm-hmm.
and we're kind of like, oh, life sucks or whatever. Sympathetic kicks in, we can feel overwhelmed, we're all jittery, we're nervous. Somewhere in that flow in the middle that keeps us motivated, following our desires about what we want to do. And especially, I think the best desires are if they're about how we serve, find a way to serve. Because in serving, we also get rid of the notion. We're not living from the idea of who we think we are. So then I like that middle path, like you described. So for me, I have my daily routines. Time in nature is always good. Being still and remembering being, just being without name, form, culture, nationality, race, just be. That's my in between of those two extremes. And I know them. I think everybody does. But if you're on the boredom side, that parasympathetic is kicked in, you think that life is dull. But if you're overwhelmed, and man, I've been there. I don't like that bank of the river. It's so I try to go that middle path.
So I can imagine that you, as with such extensive experience in paramedics, know the overwhelm part quite well.
Oh, I felt it quite extremely, and especially because my personal story was I was a month into the course. It was a 1-year course back in 1982, 83 when I took it. So started in September of 82. And I knew within a month that, oh my God, I thought, but I was 20, I was turning 20, I was 24 and I needed to find a career, and I'd always struggled. And I think that's because I was denying my true self, that I thought I had to find something. So I'm glad I at least found that. It's a way of giving. You certainly didn't get into it for money. Like it's about helping. So I was very fortunate, and I dealt with a lot of people. And yes, when the tones used to go off, you know, inside, when the tones for a call went off at a base, I had this fear of, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be able to serve and do a good job to help people in times of crisis? And there has to be some center. If you go in and if you're totally identified with them, you're kind of useless, because then quite often they're panicked. So if you panic, you're not helping them. So again, this is where in later years where meditation really became important, and then that helped prepare me to help in a better way. I gradually became more accustomed to the tones and what calls were like. So it's like anything, you learn and you evolve, I hope.
So I guess, yeah, you have a pretty interesting story about how your relationship with stress evolved over time. How would you call this relationship today, and what has changed?
Oh, um, the relationship with stress now is, I feel that I'm in the position of being the witness of it. Um, I watch it. I watch art as thoughts. Eckhart Tolle would do these in his presentations sometimes about the power of now. and the inner mind, and he'd be doing this, like the inner mind chewing and chewing and chewing. Well, I find that when you get established in what you really are, then you can watch that. And if you can watch that, you're in a position to calm it down or not engage, don't engage. Like the point you made about my blog name, and I'm not advertising it, but I originally, because I don't make money off it, it's not about money. It never will be. It's about giving, but think twice. I wanted people to actually think twice, consider twice whether you should engage the thought. Muji, I made a note here. Muji is a teacher that I really like. Have you ever seen him? Have you?
No.
Does that? He teaches in Portugal now, and he's an Advaita master, a teacher of non-duality, about oneness. And this does relate to managing stress. And he said, as far as thoughts, because I think our stress has a lot to do with what thoughts we engage. Like, let's say if it was the old me back in divorce days, sudden feeling lost, if I engaged that thought, it could keep me spinning for hours. I think a lot of people are like that. My opinion, Muji would teach that. The one time he taught about looking at your thoughts, observing them like a peek hole in a door. And he would say, you take a look through that peek hole, and if it's on the other side, that there's like a knock, and it's like the thought goes, let me in, I'm a good thought, I'm fine, or whatever. You question, you have to judge, you have to govern the mind, be in the position above the mind. But he said, just know that whether the thought seems like a friendly thought, and it's going to be nice to engage that, something like I'm having a nice conversation, so you open the door but he said, just know that there's going to be 12 of its friends tagging along behind either way. So good or bad. So choose. But most people, I think that a lot of people think they are their thoughts. They are their sensations. They are the images. They are the feelings. And we're not. When you establish yourself as the witness, when you know more about your true self, you get to pick and choose rather than being driven to either this bank or that bank of stress. And it allows you to choose. That's been really powerful for me.
I love how you mentioned this colorful metaphor when you think there's a nice thought coming, but there's a caveat to it. It always brings friends, and
Yep.
you have to be careful about those friends also.
Oh, very, very, very true. Or at least that's been my experience. In fact, my best days are when you go through and the finite mind has basically shut down. You're just being. This is why I meditate. Like, for instance, and another thing I do with meditation, I always mix up the times deliberately.
Mm-hmm.
I do things that keep me in the moment. Our patterns, our life patterns, they largely repeat. Mm-hmm. So if somebody always does 20 minutes, and I'll do 20 minutes as a minimum every day. But for instance, before this interview, I set my watch, did 11 minutes. I could do 9, I'll do 10, I'll do 8, I'll do 2. And then I'll finish the other 18 later in the day. Yeah. But I did that wanting to bring the best, the real me to this interview. So I think it's a wonderful practice. It literally, for those who need the distraction of the apparently external world, it can be quite stressful when they're first learning to do it. But I was drawn to it. So I'm so grateful it's part of my life.
Yeah, I got curious while you were talking. You were mentioning that you try to break out the patterns with meditation, so it's not repetitive.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that you try to do activities that bring you to the presence. What kind of activities? Like, what are those things that bring you to the presence?
Everything you can do. When I find for me, when I'm established in the position of watching, then I bring presence. So let's say you're drying yourself in the shower. And a friend of mine, I've mentioned this too also, and it does bring you to it. It brings you out of the pattern. I've learned a lot from Bob Proctor, who is a man who teaches, he's about 87 now, I believe, from Toronto, Canada. I don't know him personally again, but I've watched his teachings about the law of attraction. He said, you watch, like, let's say if it was, okay, here I've got a coffee here, and let's say I just put in the milk. You watch, if you watch or pay attention, you probably stir it, your habitual 3 times to the right, maybe twice to the left, and then you ding it on the side with the spoon. And if you're aware, you can choose. So when you're drying yourself in the shower, you can actually choose to be present and go, I'm going to dry the tip of my nose first. Something totally, it brings you into almost it brings you to the aliveness, the beauty in the present moment out of the mind. The mind would have us go, oh, I'm just drying myself. This is nothing special. This also brings us into the beauty. Life is so beautiful without the definitions of the mind. I love it. I'm in love with life. I love it.
Yeah, I already can see the pattern in the sense that if I understood you correctly, then what you meant by doing the things that bring you to the present is actually bringing the presence into the things you do other way around, actually. And it's actually breaking that pattern of habitual mind, because we all know that our brain is constructed to save energy and make things habitual so it can get automated.
Exactly.
And if I understood you correctly, that your way of bringing yourself to the presence is just breaking that pattern and just paying attention to just little things.
I like to do that. And it's just and the more you practice, well, the more you are presence, the more you are living from that, you'll choose a different parking spot at the grocery store. You'll go to the farthest area and get a few steps in. I find that brings it, or not, but it, like you said, breaks free. And I know what you mean about the patterns of life. Yeah, the mind is meant to serve us. If we couldn't delegate, if it didn't gradually become down into the subconscious, we'd have to learn how to drive a car again, like a 16-year-old all over again every day. It would be horrendous. But the mind allows us to open the door, get in, flick it on, start up the engine, and drive. Now that's a plus side, but it, to me, can also rob us. But if we're governing, and that's central to the law of attraction. Know what you're thinking. And one of the greatest ways that I learned about that was through The Secret movie by Rhonda Byrne. And it was about our feelings. Our feelings tell us so much. You cannot be feeling great and having been thinking or focusing on thoughts of life is tough, life is really bad, my truck won't start and I got a flat tire. That can, but if you, sorry, I lost my train of thought there with this, but oh yeah, the subconscious. So yeah, just be aware. The mind is an excellent servant, but a terrible master, as you know.
Yeah,
well,
great.
Most of us are being whipped into shape every day by the mind.
So I was wondering, you were touching the subject of feelings, and
yes,
I was wondering, how do you specifically separate stress as something to be conscious of, or just you go through your day and keep observing as much as you can? Do you have like this alertness specifically to pinpoint, okay, I'm stressed now, this is something I don't want to, and maybe there's something to do about it? How does it work for you?
I find too that and this applies to the law of attraction, which a lot of people There's some people may think that that's just a false thing. I know I questioned it years ago because I thought, what part of me wanted some of the painful events that I apparently went through. And then I thought, well, maybe there's a different level. Maybe there was something subconsciously that was there. But I believe that what we're habitually impressing upon the mind will be expressed. So if it's like driving the car analogy that we went over, you're fortunate if you impress good habits like getting in, putting on your seatbelt, checking the mirrors, checking about you, and you're there, you're present. Now, if you've like the computer program, we all know the old analogy, garbage in, garbage out. And so hopefully if we're present, we'll put in good habits. So even for me, every time that, let's say, an event happens, and let's say my mind labels it, because on its own, it's a nothing. Until it's labeled, it just isness. Oh, gee, there's a skunk in the road. Wow, right in front of me. Wow, it's gonna stink. For both. But the more you can stay present, then it's like driving the car. Then I've impressed staying centered during any events. I would believe the teaching of, this is my cover, but don't avoid the extremes. And pleasure and pain are related. So most people are trying from a body mind, they're trying to live it. I only want to be here at the pleasure point all the time. Life is good. The meals are good. Great relationships, whatever, but life swings. We only know the mountaintop by the valley. So they go together. So I agree, avoid extremes. So stay centered and be aware of what you're impressing into the mind. Because you're going to witness what you think about, you do bring about. William Blake, this is a quote that I learned from reading some books by Rupert Spira. He had William Blake, a quote, "What man is, as man is, so he sees." So as you are within, you're going to see it. But most people are like David Icke would say. David Icke, I don't know if you know him. He'd say, you're combing the mirror. It's too late. If you're combing the stuff out here, no, stay centered, live from within, as within, so without. But a lot of people can't put two and two together that way. They think, are you really trying to say that my thoughts and my habitual way of being are creating my life? And I would go, yep.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And I would just wanted to ask you, we are talking about this automation and habits.
Yes.
What other habits you're trying to adapt for yourself to have this encouraging and positive, instead of garbage in, except meditation? You already told this present.
Yeah, that's true. And time in nature, I like what Eckhart Tolle said about that once. I've read a few of his books, and again, I don't know him, man. It'd be such a pleasure to meet this man too. He was so driven by the time, at 29, he had his enlightenment thing where the false self stopped ruling his life. And he does an analogy to, so let's see, you said about what?
I asked about habits. What other habits you're trying to adapt?
Present. Oh, okay. Here's the point about that he mentioned. He said about nature is great too, because a walk in nature or time by the seashore, there's a resonance with that. And he said, what's great about nature is it's not trying to be other than it is. Only man is living by this thing of, I have to look just right. Oh, look at this hair here. I just got to get that back. Only man is doing that. But if I'm just being, so nature teaches us that, like he said, Eckhart said one time, a tree falls in the forest and it falls across just where it is, and it's fine where it is. So nature, when I walk in nature, go by the beach, water is something that calls to me. Some people it's mountains or forests. It reminds you that it's okay to just be, to be as you are. That's a title of a book. Ramana Maharshi, who was an awakened sage at 16 in India. Be as you are. I think it's, but most people are trying to live through the perspective of the false self, and that's why this is my passion to share this, because I know I was always, after divorce, I was chasing something out from me, and until I got centered within, I wasn't feeling the peace that is our birthright. I honestly believe it's our birthright. I honestly believe that until we label something as a problem, it's not. And what's great about that too, you can prove it as relatively. What could be a problem for me? You might go, all right, this is a non-issue, I can help you. Or both of us might be, maybe if we were living by the old false self way, would think we're having a major problem, and somebody else goes, oh, I can help both of you. This is, a lot of times it's our ignorance that has us label something. I like to, if in some of my writing, I once wrote something, if you paint everything beige, it goes with everything. So that's kind of the middle path. Don't go to the bright reds, don't go to the black, don't stay, then it goes with everything. So it may sound lackluster, but ironically, it's very full way to live. My happiest days are when art doesn't show up, if you know what I mean, art.
Yeah. So if I understood you correctly, then for you, the breaking point that finally got you centered was, or got you on a journey of being centered, because it's kind of like continuous dance around it.
Oh yeah, and I never, if you think you've arrived, for me at least, that's no. Continuous learning, but not driven by it.
Yeah.
I buy new books, I listen to podcasts, I click on what you have to offer. And let me just, I hope you won't mind, this isn't meant as false flattery, but you're helping so many people. I see some of your clips on LinkedIn and that, and love them, and they're really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Arthur.
You're welcome.
Nice, you broke the pattern. So let's go for something else. So the first thing that came to my mind is, I remember my train of thought. So I was thinking about in the frames of, it was a pain from the divorce, if I understood it correctly. And then you had a solution, which was meditation. Was it the only thing, or there was something else?
I journaled for a while, but that really, and I know that works for some people.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just a way of watching their thoughts.
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing that works for me, and it may sound phony to a lot of people, but I love the saying. I heard one law of attraction teacher say it, everything is a blessing. And I do it as ... in my mind, or a blessing in disguise. So often I think the mind is telling us, I gotta have this. I used to be a very driven goal seeker. And now I have my goals because I don't want to be on that parasympathetic side of stress where it's like couch potato. So I have my goals, but I attract the way, and I believe we can. And but I used to be very driven, and I think that's very challenging to live with. Someone I used to keep, I'll give you an example. I used to exercise, and I still believe in exercise, but I'm not driven by it. Well, at one time I was. I kept an exercise journal for 20 years, married, every other day.
Yeah.
I'd write down 20 or 30 minutes, and it was 85% that I'm working out with my cardio on the rower in the basement or whatever. And even if I had a cold, my ego told me, get down there on that bike or the rower or the treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
And now I listen more to that inner voice, to have the peace, and also realizing that, kind of evaluate. If you're centered, you can evaluate, is this really so life important? If I flub this interview with you,
Mm.
is the end world gonna end? It's like, no. So it reminds me of when I first traveled. When I was 20, I took my first trip, and it was to Australia. And this isn't bragging or whatever, but what I know now that happened then, I was away for 7 months, did some hitchhiking. I worked at a railway in the outback. It was great. I grew, I evolved. It's like I read about some of your Japan, and oh my God, your trips is amazing. Why that was so good for me? Because I was able to leave the persona of art back in Canada. So I felt free. So now I live from that point of freedom, and I'd like to help other people. I'd like to help alleviate some of the suffering that people are going through, because inevitably life will challenge us. I used to think, as far as divorce and that, I actually had this thought. I thought, oh wow, now I'm not going to get to be one of those people that is 50 years married, and the story,
Mm-hmm.
the story dictated by life. Well, now I can look at it, and for many years now, as a gift. There's something there. Life is trying to elevate us, that where there's no friction. So that, I think, is the middle road of stress, or at least in my mind. There has to be a little friction for growth, just a little, and then manage it, and it'll grow. Like, or that's my take on. I'm not claiming that I know the one way, because I think everybody finds their way to what works for them. But a lot of people, I remember reading in a book by Deepak Chopra,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, be aware of your addictions.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, they might think, aware of my addictions? What addictions would you mean? Well, to me, if we're coping with anything by, let's say it might be this guy, Art, who, wanted to find a partner for so many years. And that's not wrong, but it's your approach to doing it. Like, if you think that someone else is going to be an answer to your life, or if you think that an extra drink or two at night is an answer, I'd say question that, at least, for what's right for you. I'm fortunate that that wasn't part of my road. I'm fortunate that it led me to books with information. And even if I had to read the books 20 times, and I'm not kidding you, one called The Master Key System. I used to take it to the gym
Mm-hmm.
in my gym bag all the time. And when I was on the exercise bike, I'd be there reading it, trying to understand this esoteric knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I finally cracked at least a little of it.
So what's your take on that crack you just mentioned? So what was the crack?
The crack is finding out what, not who we really are. It's awareness, and it's not thinking your awareness. It's being still enough to discover that there is a part of you that is eternal. And that's not a religious view. It's experienced. For me, it's we can watch our mind, and what is it that is aware? What is it there? And Sri Nisargadatta, so it sounds like a long name, but he didn't write the book, but it's Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. It's his talks in a book called I Am That. Seekers went to him. He realized his truth at 37. I believe he lived in Mumbai, India, Bombay, I think it was called at the time. And he realized his true self. And he said, it's a quote that's similar to, you are prior to the mind. Most people think they are the mind. So that would be the key. And this is why I'm so passionate about it. It's not It's not about combing the mirror, as David Icke says, and getting, because everything we do out here, apparently out here, is going to crumble. If you've been somebody that has to climb a mountain, let's say you've climbed Everest and you go, wow, holy smokes, that's an amazing thing. And your ego takes great pride in that. And then it needs to climb to the highest mountain on 2 continents, 3 continents, the 3rd, 4th, and it needs the 7th. And the ego would have it that it had done it on 6. And if it didn't get the 7th, it would think it was a loser, you know, even though it had done it on 6. So ultimately, it brings me back to cracking the code is know what you truly are. It's at the core of my articles. And it's also the law of attraction. I used to be, I can admit this, and maybe some people are the same. I was trying to use the law of attraction from a false perspective. I was thinking I was the body mind, literally that I was this. Well, it's been about 3 years now. It took a lot of reading, but that finally cracked where I know I'm not this. This is an object. My thoughts are subtle objects. That's why in Hindu teaching, and I'm not pretending to be an expert on that, I'm not, but I've read quite a few books, and so I like to share information. This would be the gross body. This would be the gross. It's dense. And then the subtle body would be of the mind, watching our thoughts. And when we realize that we can watch both of those, it establishes us in the position of I am awareness. I am that I am. That's what I am, and there's no end to me. So I gradually started to see the connection between law of attraction teaching, which is about choose your thoughts, and visualize. I didn't really know the importance of that. I was basically just being a driven body mind on positive goals. But then I was seeing the books such as The Ultimate Understanding is a great book by Ramesh S. Balsekar, and I Am That by Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, pointing us to what you are. I actually sent out a message on LinkedIn this morning, and it's a little quote. It was just replying to somebody had made a comment, and Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, I go through my books with a highlighter, so I get more of that, and I read with a friend. And highlighting it seems to draw it in, and then I'll keep the history of these quotes. So it's to be a person is to be asleep, is what he said, and I believe it. I believe that most of us are apparently, I would say, existing unconsciously, driven by those patterns like that are in the car, the way we shop, the way we are in relationships. That for me was cracking it. I literally got cracked open. And meditation for me, a few years ago, I actually noticed tears coming sometimes when I would be meditating. Not all the time, maybe once every few months, but they felt good. It was like something that was yearning to be noticed. And I believe that's our inner true self, not the conceptual self of the story of me. To me, that would be the false self. The authentic self is just I am that I am. It's prior to name and form. It's prior to I am Arthur Russel. No, how can I be a name? It's literally impossible. I cannot be a name. A name is a symbol that refers to that which I really am. So that's what cracked it for me. And then I'm glad that it just kept opening up and opening up. And then as I read more books, I understood more. But not the danger in that. The books can't give it to you. They're only pointers. And then I can I cannot give it to you or anybody else either. I can only point to, which is great because then it keeps my ego out of it, where I want my ego out of everything. less me, more true self, all the better.
Yeah, that was a great answer, and
Thank you.
quite detailed. And as you said, you cannot do the work for anyone. You just can point. And
Right.
I was also wondering, because you were touching so many different interesting subjects, and I was thinking, where could I go next? And the keywords I picked up were about that mind body connection,
Right.
and you were also mentioning this part where if you follow the ego needs and shoulds, it
Oh,
might get you to the trouble.
oh.
Then I had this other idea. How about
hmm
body needs, and how do you take care of your body these days after all this journey you've been?
Do you know? Do you know what? Here, let's see if I can show this too. Here we go. Well, because of the law of attraction, I've been a big believer in affirmations for many years. Now, I used to be using them from the body mind, but now when I think of looking at my affirmations of I'm putting programming in to how I want to drive that. I want that car to appear in life. So here's one of mine. Does that show up just fine for you there,
Yeah.
or is it back?
I am now vibrant, perfect, health, youthful, and fit, through and through, from head to toe.
There
Awesome.
we go. So I see that. That's my reminder here in the kitchen of my apartment.
Mhm.
And I also have them spread and it'll be like, for instance, okay, here's an example of what you said about health. So there's about health. I would also never tell myself a negative as health. So I can relate this as point about memory. A lot of people would believe what they hear about memory and that some kind of negative thing. I will never tell myself a negative about anything. I'm a 63-year young buck, buck or whatever, youthful man, whatever we call it. But so many people have that, and I used to tell my children this when they were younger. If somebody was saying, I don't even like saying I with it. Let's say Bob says he can't remember.
Mhm.
I'll never. So I would tell my kids if they started saying something like that, just gently, I would say, if you program in, it'll come to me in a minute.
Mhm.
It comes. Or even better, it'll come to me in a moment. Shorten up the thing of that information. This to me is just about tuning into information. So notice it, maybe that there is lack of recall coming, and then tell yourself, it'll come to me in a minute, or it'll come to me in a moment, and leave it at that and just let it come. But
Mhm.
if you stress at it, yeah. So for me, balance, I now this is where we have some people might have different views, and that's great too, whatever works for them. If I'm going to have a piece of chocolate cake, and trust me, I don't go that route a lot, which is good because I have affirmations on I am like, for me with weight, I have one. I am now at the perfect weight to my height. I am fit, muscular, and trim. It would be, and feel that and visualize that you are. Where before I was always combing the mirror, I was like out there working hard on the treadmill or whatever and think, well, to be honest, I think that if you take a lousy attitude into your exercise, if to me, we can be caught by that too. If we think we need that to stay healthy,
Mhm.
then we need it. I believe it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. I can't prove it, but I also believe that if you think you have to have the leafy greens every day, like,
Mhm.
then you need them. And I think I was reading in a book the other day here. It's the one it's Science of Being or whatever, and something by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He was largely responsible for bringing transcendental meditation to the West. And he was saying about food, and he said the attitude that we bring to it is so important. So for me, if I'm going to indulge in having occasional piece of cake or a little bit of ice cream or something like that, I'm not going to tell myself, as some people would say, Bob might say, oh, this is so bad for me. I would never do that. Why would you do that? It
Mm.
just, so when it's about balance. I know that since the C story started up with the world, like, I mean, I had a gym membership prior to this, but then everything closed down here. And I'm not meaning that as an excuse, but I like to go swimming in lakes. I was out at a beach only a few days ago. It was great. It was wonderful. But I'm just enjoying being. Um, I'll tell you a story that I think relates this about health if you want. And it's about somebody that sounded driven. I won't mention any names, but it relates to when I was with my daughter when she was getting introduced to her workplace. And she had won an award that, and it was a memorial award for a man that was 46 and he used to be a health fanatic. Now, again, I can't prove this, but the lady who was giving us the tour together, where I was just tagging along, and she mentioned about how he'd been so health conscious. Now, he had actually, and God love him and his family, he had passed away riding a bike. And he used to, it sounded from what he said, what this lady mentioned, she mentioned that would tell his wife, oh, don't drink that tea, it's bad for you, whatever. It sounded like his mind had maybe swung to the extreme of thinking you need this or whatever. So in my mind, I didn't say a word, but in my mind, I was wondering whether he had a fear of death, whether there was something in the subconscious about that, because the car, as we said, it's going to behave the way the programming got put in, and until to me, it won't drive differently until we change the programming. So balance. I wouldn't advise needing extreme exercise. Yes, get out and move, be happy, be joyful in whatever activity gives you pleasure and doesn't hurt anybody else, would be my balanced approach.
Yeah, I love your answer, how you started going top down. So starting with the mind, starting with the belief, and belief center about needing or not needing anything. And then just, if I understood you correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, then your approach to the physical exercise these days is first programming in the beliefs you want to live by.
Yep.
And then attracting, like you said in an example with a car, attracting behavior which is complacent with this belief. Instead of doing like regiment exercises, you would just go for let's say parking, as you said before, parking a bit further, or these things will come automatically, right?
Sure. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. If it feels natural to you, build it into your life. And I was not doing that before. It was my egoic self that was basically torturing me, even when I had colds or whatever. And it would be, oh, I have to go down and do that's it. I did not find that a peaceful way to live at all. So I'd rather go with, and I also, and I've lived long enough, thank goodness, to see that there's been fads. You will have too. So people go, oh, get rid of the carbs. People go this way. It's something that catches their attention. Take vitamin E. And then you just see bottles of it lined up on the pharmacy shelves. You know, they're selling 400, 200 IU, 800. It is like the ego has this tendency to make, if one little vitamin is good, it makes, oh, well, it'll live even better with 20. I think our body calls to us when there's something also to eat or don't eat, listen. And maybe, and I can still learn from this, especially during the last year and a half of what the world has gone through. Be aware of if you're eating for pleasure. And maybe that 80, stop at 80% when, and it's also knowing the difference between appetite and hunger. Hunger, I think, will shut off this will close and give it some time to register. And but appetite will go, if one piece of cake is good, 5 is going to taste even better. And that's just not true. It's just not true. You're going to pay the price for that because it's not balanced.
I love this finally, because food is also one of my things I'm struggling the most at this time. I like eating for that pleasure, not because of hunger once in a while.
Yep.
And yeah, just being aware of it, it has been helped me a lot to get better back to the balance more often. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the wisdom at your age that, but anyway, I'm just grateful.
Mm.
I'm just grateful, and I do love it. I love it when I see my affirmations too. I'll have different ones that I can write out on it's not a chalky thing or whatever, but it's a message. And what I do too is for affirmations for health and that, I believe the mind notices things that I'll put them on a skew. I'll put them on an angle like this where my mind has to pay attention, and where I'm going to be there, where even if I'm not, the mind is taking in everything. And I think a lot of people don't know that what's impressed upon the mind will be expressed. And they just don't know that. A lot of people think their thoughts don't matter. And I would actually say that our thoughts, the ones that we engage, are one of the most important factors in our health and our well-being, because thoughts lead to behavior, just like that famous saying by Lao Tzu, it's about thoughts leads to actions, and actions lead to, and character ultimately leads to your destiny. And that's totally as within. So this is why the law of attraction, in a paradoxical way, has you claim it first. And Neville Goddard was a mystic from the Barbados. He taught in the U.S. during I think it was the 50s and 60s, 70s, somewhere in there, about the law of attraction. And he would have people visualize the end result that they desire. And it's about putting in a clear paradigm to the mind, instead of looking at, I call it circumstantial evidence. For every time that we look at the spare tire around the middle, and especially if we feel it, I think we're sabotaging ourselves. I would go to your inner vision of how you desire to see yourself. Just like we've seen stories of, there were tests that they've done where they did basketball shooting hoops, and you've seen that probably, where even the ones who just imagined the basketballs going into the hoops, better performance, and they did nothing but visualize it. And then they had ones who did nothing, who, no surprise there, they didn't visualize and they didn't get out on an actual court and shoot hoops. There's nothing improved. But the ones who either actually shot hoops, or the ones who just visualized but the ones who visualized actually got better performance. If I'm correct on that, you could Google it, but it's kind of interesting that true. What we visualize, it does become our apparent circumstances. And what I love about the law of attraction is it crosses all barriers. It's your health, it's your wealth, it's your success in relationships. It's just a wonderful teaching, and it's much deeper than I thought initially. I'm very grateful because it's the people who were writing those books were teaching us about our true self, and also how to get better results in life.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the law of attraction, and
Yes.
I also hear that you have to have this balance, because if you look from the standpoint of energies, masculine would be that goal-driven, I have to have those goals.
Yes.
Extreme feminine would be, I will attract everything I need, and the balance would be like in between, when you take some action and you still attract the things, and it's kind of like hand in hand. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree that it doesn't mean, but I will admit this, and it surprised me because I used to be the type. Now, this is going to seem very odd to you, maybe. It certainly would have to me. I mean, I remember hearing it years ago, probably 10 or 15 years ago, that I'm not the doer. And I thought, what? Not the doer? Well, now I would definitely agree with that. And there's a book by Ramakrishna, I believe. I ordered here. This is the great thing about being able to order and read a lot of books. And in retirement, I mean, I indulged in that while I was working as a paramedic. I always had one in my duty bag in case you're on standby somewhere or whatever. But it was about a book on non-doership, that we are not the doers. And I would definitely agree with that. But here's the thing, though, too. So basically, okay, this opportunity to have this interview with you. So I attracted that. I had only commented with you, but maybe on a couple of your posts and liked them, and they lift me too. So I mean, I'm glad to read your posts. I really value you and your posts. I want you to know that this is I'll never lie, because if I lie what I put out, I'm going to get lying back. So it's not false. So when it surprised me a few days ago that, wow, I was just ready to shut off LinkedIn, and then came your invitation for this. And I thought to myself, wow, this is so cool. I've attracted that. But, and here's where I view it as acting. I had to say yes to it. I had to want to expand and evolve and share my message, believe in myself enough to think that I have something of value to share. And the same as others. There's something to be learned from everyone. And it's a wonderful approach. And man, it enriches your life. It's truly about all of us. But so I'm not the doer, but so when I had to kind of grant the okay and go, yes, I would love to have an interview with you. And I just would like you to know that I appreciate you reaching out to me, because, but it's like a way that presents. And I know, well, same thing for my articles. People will sometimes give me really nice comments about some of them. Sometimes they're not a huge viewership, but I think that will expand as people see that they get value from them. If I was trying to work hard at it as Art the doer, I would have probably had to shut down the blog long ago. I did after about a year and 3/4, and then just because I felt I shared all I could at the time about the law of attraction primarily. And then when this story started up in 2020, March, I felt motivated. There was something within me that wanted to share. Maybe I have something that could encourage people through this challenging situation. And I'm not saying I believe it all, but anyway, I'll leave it at that. We're all entitled to our views, and to be respectful of others' views. And then articles started pouring through me again. And sometimes and actually this is tied into an affirmation that I made years ago about the law of attraction. When I wanted to understand it more deeply, I thought, okay, claim it. So I claimed it as, I am now. So I always believe in starting, for the most part, if I can, my affirmations with I am. It invokes, it comes from the highest part of what we really are. I am. I am now more fully knowledgeable about the law of attraction, and I use this knowledge to help improve the personal and professional quality of people's lives. And I wrote that out, and I would sign them usually at the beginning of every year. I would do maybe 6 or 8 goals written out in I am, and then I would sign it, Arthur Russell, and date it January, whatever. Usually I'd be doing them new again. And it kind of surprised me a few years ago when it was like, wow, that's actually come true. More books read, more understanding, never being foolish enough to think you've arrived, because a know-it-all is the surest sign that you've started to devolve. You've started to go back instead of. Bob Proctor says he said, he will say there is no learned man or woman. Learned implies static. Life is always moving. Mm-hmm. So we've never arrived, and that's the safest thing. There's always something more to learn, but that's exciting though too. The ego maybe looks at it as challenging because it goes, well, you mean I don't have it all yet? You're never going to have it. So just enjoy be in that wonderful flow of life and learn. It's great. The ego might not like it.
Yeah, there are lots of things ego don't like, and
I know.
And I was thinking because we could start to wrap this thing up, and I have a couple more questions I would like to ask you. Okay. And one of them would be, what are your rounding thoughts about love your stress? So what are your thoughts about this topic in general?
So let's see. Let me give this what it really deserves. I think all of us are stress it's universal. All of us feel it on some degree or another. I would say that the more we are established in our true self, the more we'll find ourselves more than able to cope with whatever comes. I don't know what's going to happen 20 minutes from now. And I would imagine that that's the same for you and a lot of people. But the mind kind of tells us that, oh no, we know exactly the way the day is going to go. Like, here's my list, and I'm doing this and this and this. And then if it doesn't, then if our expectations are not met, if we haven't climbed that 7th peak on the 7th continent, we can start this inner dialogue of, uh-oh, now the day is toast. Now no, it's not. Stay centered and be grateful. Gratitude too reduces so much stress. I find that'd probably be mine. Be established as true self, and practice gratitude every day. Whether you're divorced, whether your long-term relationship is gone, whether you're carrying an extra 30 pounds, hey, you're still carrying it. You're here in this great adventure called life on earth. You're here and you get to interact with wonderful people. Find something in yourself that you love, and find something in them that you love. Look for what you're seeking. You will find. The Bible says that. Yeah. And it's like, so if you're seeking good, your mind becomes, it finds the good. Focus on that gratitude. Make gratitude a daily part. I used to carry a little stone called that a guy in The Secret, I think he called it an attitude of gratitude. Yeah. And it reminded him every time he touched it. And trust me, I carried one. I don't need it now because I've installed the program of gratitude. Yeah. And it can be for seemingly small things. That's about the best I got for that.
I love how you answered the question, because I asked you about love your stress, and you already answered more of my second question. I was in back of my mind as like a follow-up, and it's like kind of like attraction, as you said, that I was about to ask you, like one thing you would love for people to take away or practice, and you said gratitude. And centeredness and just install these habits. Yeah, just love how synchronistically you already answered this.
Yes, and I remember hearing a man, his first name is Gay something. He's a teacher of the law of attraction or whatever, and I listened to a presentation of his one time, and he was on the phone with a client, and the client was very disturbed and very distraught about things, and he said, okay, I'm going to stay on the line with you, but I'd like you to go out and do something nice for one of your neighbors. And the guy went and he grabbed a broom and he swept the lady down the hall or apartment out, outer access and swept the mat and swept the entrance to her apartment. And then he came back. And of course, when we focus on doing something good for someone else,
Yeah.
we get our mind off of ourselves. And literally, it feels like our problems and our stress have at least come down. Pry yourself out of the dungeon of the trap of ego. That works. Gratitude and doing something for others. It's not hollow, and it's not a false solution. It's real. If you think about how you can help others, there's less here that's saying I have a problem.
Yeah, I have observed the same dynamics time and time again.
Yes,
and it just works magical as you take off the focus on worrying about yourself and instead focus on helping others. It's kind of like this light switch.
It's absolutely magical. My mom used it for years. Her body passed a couple of years ago, coming up this November, and many years after my father had died. But mom's solution, when she was naturally feeling down, and she didn't dwell in that, it would be, how could she serve? And for her, she played the piano at a local church. She was a choir leader, and she would get invited to play at somebody's wedding or whatever, and she did it. There was never any money involved. It was to give, and that actually led to her having great health and a way of giving. It's everybody benefits.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think we're rounding up
Okay.
this conversation to the advice: be grateful and help others, give, share. And before we leave completely, I always love to ask, I'm curious, what would be the next person you would love to see on the podcast? Who would be the one person, at least one person I would love to reach out to?
I would love to, and this is a lady that helped me, and it surprised me. Her name is, I'm not sure the name, her last name. I've had a call with her, but Barbara Vercruz. Have you seen her wonderful posts? She's from Belgium.
Not sure.
Barbara,
I might need to have a link. Could you send it afterwards?
I'll send you a link to her. She's a very knowledgeable lady, and she went through her own trying experiences. We had just a personal, she was actually the first Zoom call. I've only had about 4 or 5 of these. This is a few months ago. And she's a wonderful, knowledgeable life coach. And she was the first person that sprang to mind. And I think one of the reasons is I sent her a question and I said, do you think it would be wrong for me to put people's names in when I do a post? Would it be to have all these, or would they feel overwhelmed? And she actually cared enough. She sent me an audio answer to that. She went above and beyond giving, because I thought maybe she'd just text me a little reply. And she offered me that. And I was blown away with how much, she doesn't know me. And I thought, this lovely lady was so giving. She obviously knows about the importance of giving. I would love to see an interview. I don't know if she would be available or not, but I'll definitely send you the link to her. She's from Belgium, and she loves to read. She's a wealth of knowledge.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Arthur. It was really awesome chat, and
thank you.
There's so much nuggets and valuable diamonds here to be dug out in this conversation. I can clearly see you've been on this journey for a while.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, Tom. I really mean it. You've got so much to share with all of us too, and I'm going to be reading your posts with even greater interest than before. But anyway, thank you for all the help that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Arthur. So thank you very much, and let's have a chat another time as well.
I would love that. I would love that. Have a wonderful day.
Have a magical day. And as I always love to end my posts, smile and be present.
That's right. It's totally true. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.